right, so I'm going to start the recording now.
It will also help if anybody needs to come late or leave early in the future.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Thanks.
So what today's session is, I've asked, morning Nicole.
Morning.
What I've asked for today's session is I'm going to get Jarrod, a friend of mine, to present on understanding what data is all about, how to analyze and interpret your data, how to make data meaningful, and he's going to do that presentation. Afterwards, I would like to do, there's going to be a little chat again on what's happening in the markets, and then we'll open for questions afterwards and just see if anything comes up. I did send out a question at the end of last session, the question being, what lessons have you learned along the way or that you're still learning that don't go away until you have mastered it? And I've got a lot of interesting answers around that, so we can have a little brief discussion around that as well. But for now, I'd like to just share a little bit of a book that I've been listening to around data, just to explain what it is. It explains it better than what I can. And just give me a second. I just need to share my iPad here. Okay. The book that I've been listening to is called What Do We Do When Machines Do Everything? And this again came from when I was at that PPS conference, and we discussed what data is all about, where's it all going. So I just want to share for 4 minutes just an introduction to Jarrod's talk, and then I'm going to hand over to him. Are you all good with that?
Perfect, Jason.
Cool. Okay. Come on.
I'm not hearing anything.
Is it coming through?
No, I don't hear anything.
No.
No, not coming through.
No, can no one hear it?
No.
Ah.
Not yet?
I can hear, I can see.
Hold on, let me just... Sorry, I don't understand why that didn't work. Okay, there you go. All right, I'm going to start it again. Sorry, guys. It'll work now. Is it working?
No.
Movie lot. It is in your building. It's in your home. It's in your office.
Got it.
It's pervading all the institutions that drive our global economy. From Alexa to Nest to Siri to Uber to Waze, we are surrounded by smart machines running on incredibly powerful and self-learning software.
No.
We've been enjoying, without even really noticing, various forms of weak artificial intelligence, AI. It's how Amazon recommends just the right gift, how Netflix suggests the perfect film for your Sunday evening, or how Facebook fills your news feed. These forms of AI have been welcome little helpers, making our days just a bit easier and more fun. Once we start using them, we stop thinking about them. In just a few short years, these machines have become almost invisible to us in our personal lives. Now, AI is transitioning from being our daily little helper to something much more powerful and disruptive, as the new machines are rapidly outperforming the most talented of us in many endeavors. For example, 1. Games of intellect. AI platforms can now outcompete us at some of our most challenging games: Jeopardy, chess, and Go. Google's AlphaGo beat world champion Go player Lee Sedol by a score of 4-1 in March 2016. This was a convincing win, but not a rout. Yet, with the current rate of technological advancement, in just a few years, it will be inconceivable for a human to beat the new machines in such games of the mind. 2. Driving. The driverless car, while still relatively nascent, is already a better driver than the average person. According to a Virginia Tech study, human-driven vehicles are involved in 4.2 crashes per million miles versus 3.2 crashes per million miles for the automated car. This disparity in safety will undoubtedly grow considerably in the next few years, and driverless cars, which never text behind the wheel or drive drunk, may soon become mainstream. 3. Trading. In 2015, 6 of the top 8 hedge funds in the United States earned around $8 billion, based largely or exclusively on AI algorithms. The machine has already won in stock picking. 4. Healthcare. In medicine, the new machine is quickly surpassing the capabilities of human radiologists. Researchers at Houston Methodist Hospital utilize AI software, which interprets results of breast X-rays 30 times faster than doctors and with 99% accuracy. By contrast, mammograms reviewed by humans result in unnecessary biopsies nearly 20% of the time. 5. Law. In the legal profession, AI-enhanced computer systems are conducting discovery and due diligence far better, faster, and cheaper than the most talented team of paralegals in a white-shoe law firm. Multiple studies predict that the vast majority of paralegal work can soon be automated. We may reach a point in the not-too-distant future when relying only on humans for discovery might be grounds for malpractice. We could go on and on with many more examples, but the point is clear. The new machines have already surpassed human capability in many ways. Moreover, with the
Okay, so that was the talk that we listened to at PPS. They went on around how the new technology is taking over, and hence that's what got me thinking about doing this Zoom meeting. So I've asked Jarrod to do a little presentation on understanding data. And Jarrod, are you there? Where are you? Yeah, let me just unmute him. Can everybody see him? Unmute.
Unmute now.
Okay. Can you share your screen, or is it going to work?
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to hand over to Jarrod.
I'll share screen. So the only thing I'm worried about is audio.
Okay, I can hear.
But we'll figure that out. Okay.
Okay. Cool.
All right. So hopefully that's coming through. Okay. So thanks very much for the intro. So Jason's asked me to give a quick talk around big data. That little intro from the video, I think, from that book, I think kind of covers a lot of it. So I have to think of new material quickly. So my background is very technical. So I'm the head of technology of a company called TouchSides, where we're just leaving startup phase. I'll go into a little bit more detail of exactly what we're doing a little bit later. But just to give you a big idea around big data, so what I thought I would do is I would start off with a short little video clip from Silicon Valley. I don't know if anyone has watched it, around Jing Yang's not hot dog application. And I think that it touches on all the core points. So I'm going to unplug my headphones, and hopefully the audio will work all right. just as a bit of a warning, there's some strong language in this clip.
No, Jarrod, at the bottom of the screen, when you share the screen, you got to allow for to share the audio also. So it doesn't just share the audio.
Okay.
So when you click on share screen, sorry guys, you there?
I am. So
Oh no,
I'm not seeing that option.
I don't know. Okay, should we leave the
From video to audio, just click on the audio there and see if that helps. One above
No,
video.
on this, I don't know how to, on the actual share screen option, there's a little thing that says share audio.
Oh.
All right, let's.
Because I mean, I'm playing it. The audio's coming through my PC
Yeah,
speakers.
you haven't shared your computer audio. It's fine.
Okay, so then I'll skip the video. So I'll talk through the video as it's playing, just so you understand. So okay, so basically, Jing Yang is telling about he's got this amazing product and he wants to do the pitch on the product, and now he's holding up his phone to a table full of food. He takes a picture, and the computer does some work, and it goes, wow, amazing. It identified that it was a hot dog. So now everyone's really excited, and they think they're going to be super rich because they've just cracked this amazing new product that's able to analyze pictures. And now what's going to happen is Jing Yang's going to take another picture of another product, and everyone's excited to see how it identifies the pizza. And it says not hot dog. So now everyone's devastated, and they're like, what's going on? What kind of an application is that? And he goes, yeah, it's amazing. It can detect two pictures. It can detect what is a hot dog and what is not a hot dog. And they do it again, and then obviously they see not hot dog. So now that everyone's just obviously distraught. This is just not going according to plan of what they thought, that they were doing this, that they were building this amazing application. That character just makes a quick point that he's actually created an amazing classifier, and that's the key point, and that actually he has got the foundations for good technology to identify images. And then we're just talking now that he has to go and site scrape the internet for all different photos, and he's saying no, he's not going to do that. That's a really boring job, but he has to go and check out thousands and thousands of photos to train this computer program, this classifier, to recognize things that are not a hot dog, but to actually say what it is. And now Berlik's also cursing, saying that there's no money to hire people to help him because they've spent all their money on development fees to actually build the classifier, and then on hosting fees with AWS. So what I think that does is I think it covers like all the kind of key points in saying that, well, the concept of data is actually all around us. Everywhere we look, we have data. It comes in many different shapes and forms, whether it be pictures, text, books, and there's new technology that's emerging that's making it the enabler. And in this context, it's storage and computing power that's being provided by AWS, which is Amazon Web Services. So it's a cloud provider whereby you can rent space on their equipment and you can use it, and then when you finished using it, you can just switch it off, and you only pay for the amount of time that you use, as well as the skills that are needed. So it's also pointing out that you actually do need some specialized skills to create a very intelligent machine learning algorithms, but also that's also slowly starting to become commoditized as this technology matures. These cloud providers actually give us the building blocks to do it. And just as a quick aside, if you do a quick search on this not hot dog, you'll see that it was actually built as a real system in the movie. They used a product called TensorFlow from Google, which has a whole bunch of machine learning algorithms built into it. So now, lost my slide. Okay, so what makes big data? So whenever they talk about big data, they talk about the four V's, because I mean, like we've all got data around with us. I mean, in our phones we've got contact lists, so we've got photos. So what is the difference between a set of data that you might have in a spreadsheets versus big data? So this is kind of the definition they've come up with. They talk about the volume of information that's flowing. And right now, just to give you a perspective of what's happening around the world, is that link goes to a quote that Eric Schmidt, from when he was the chairman or CEO of Google at that time, he was saying that since the dawn of the internet and 2003, the world has produced about 2.5 exabytes of data, whereas now we're producing it every 2 days. Some people are saying we're even producing it every day now in 2018. So that's like over 2 trillion gigabytes. And if you just think about how many movies you might have stored on your drives, it's an insane amount of information. This is like, you look at the New York Stock Exchange, and they claim to be generating 1 terabyte of data every single trading day. And that's an inordinate amount of data that can be sifted through and analyzed and processed to potentially assist you the next day. The velocity of the data, so how fast is that data moving? We now live in an age where pretty much everyone is connected to the internet. We've got fiber optics rolling out everywhere, so we're now able to move data at crazy speeds. Then also the supporting hardware, the I/O, the input-output infrastructure, the hard drives have improved dramatically. They talk about SSD storage, which is solid-state storage. These drives are much, much faster than drives from 10 years ago. So now huge chunks of data can be shifted in quick amounts of time. And that obviously helps to be able to process the data. Then they talk about the variety. So times have changed in that historically when they would talk about data, it was always tabular data, data that was in a spreadsheet. That's what the concept of data was. Whereas now, we have sensors everywhere. A typical car can have over 100 sensors that are reading tire pressure, temperature, timings in the engine, and exhausts, and a whole bunch of other things. A lot of us are wearing fitness watches. So I've got a fitness watch on. It's measuring my heart rates and body temperature. And these devices are going to improve and measure more and more things. We have what they call unstructured data. So this would be documents or tweets in social media. They all contain information, but it's not in a way that can be very easily processed and understood by a machine. Different for a human. Then they talk about the veracity of the data, and this is, do you trust the source? So as a business owner, if you want to make a decision, do you trust this data that's been given to you? In the news with Trump around fake news and everything, we can see it's actually quite easy to generate information that appears to be real but is not. Then it's also, never mind trusting the source, now it's what about the actual content of that data? Does it actually make sense? And what I mean by that is if you look at the age that we're in now, where people are communicating in these acronyms and emojis, how do we even know what they're saying? I mean, is the fist pump over there saying I'm going to beat you up, or I'm feeling strong today and I'm going to have a great day? Is the tears on the smiling, is it a smiling emoji crying, or is it a upset emoji crying? It's like, what is actually the context of the message? So these are all the challenges that, when you put them all together, is what is the realm of big data. And the question then is how do companies now take advantage of this? So in comes these concepts of machine learning and AI. So really, machine learning has actually been around for ages. It's been around since the 50s, maybe even a couple of years earlier. And all it is it's a bunch of people using mathematics and statistics and looking at how nature works and trying to mimic some of the behaviors in nature to develop algorithms and models for systems such that they can feed in large amounts of data, and then this algorithm or model can actually give a meaningful output. And that's really the grand sum of it. And depending on who you talk to, this concept of AI, artificial intelligence, it's very far-fetched, and it's being glamorized by the media. So all this fear of people saying that the robots are going to take over the world and things are in danger, it's very, very far away. So if you had to take the literal meaning of artificial intelligence, for a machine to be able to think like a human and make decisions like we can, we're not even close. And rather, the field of AI, which is really just machine learning, it's focusing on little subsets and different subsets. So to take that example of autonomous cars, humans are really good at making a bunch of decisions, but maybe not when you're driving in a car at 120 kilometers per hour, and you've got a whole bunch of cars around you also moving at different speeds, and there's other environmental conditions. We actually haven't evolved to make good decisions in that environment. So in that space, building algorithms or artificial intelligence to solve that particular problem is really where it's at. So that's where the industry is focusing. It's picking up these particular problems and solving them. And cars now, as I mentioned earlier, come with a whole range of sensors. So they're able to pick up how fast they're going, how fast the car in front of them is going, what's the distance, and then make millions and millions of decisions per second on what it should do next. And you may have seen there's a YouTube video clip of a Tesla car actually avoiding an accident where a car crashed in front of it, and without the driver even reacting in time, the Tesla car was able to slow down and prevent the accident. But now we start coming into another challenge, which is, I think, potentially far greater as these systems become better and more intelligent, is what about the ethics around machine learning and AI? Because what happens if you're in a similar situation and the car has to make a decision that there's a child crossing a road and there's you driving the car thundering down? The car has to choose. Does it veer off and injure the passengers, or does it stay the course and maybe not injure the passengers but hurt the person crossing the road? And I think as soon as there's going to be one of those accidents, there'll be a lot of precedences that it'll go to court. The opposing family will obviously sue the other, sue the manufacturer for whatever decision that the car ultimately made. So these are going to be interesting questions that we're going to have to solve. Okay, but going into machine learning, so what is it good at? What can you use it for? So in your business, you can, well, in any context for machine learning, it's really good at classification. So that's being able to, they call it clustering. So it's taking data and lumping it together into a particular classification. So that means if someone walks into a store and is always purchasing a certain set of products, you could potentially classify them as a shopper that is always going to buy junk food, or is always going to buy healthy food. And I think this Discovery, with their healthy food options, and that is taking good advantage of that, because now based on that classification, you can make other assumptions about that person. You can also discover associations, meaning that if you see that a person is always watching a certain type of TV show, they might then always read a certain type of book. And so those are how you've classified those sets of data. A big thing is prediction. Everyone wants to be able to predict the future, and that's really part of the idea of these models that are being created. Is it saying what is the likelihood of a certain outcome? So if I understand my system and I increase my sales force, is it guaranteed to increase my revenue? What is the probability of that outcome? Same idea, forecasting, just trying to predict the future based on historical data. Whereas probabilities is more statistics. Then the value function approximation, that's just a fancy word for more fancy words of where you're programming the computer to be able to make decisions on a constantly evolving environment. So the best example, which was mentioned in that book, is a chess game or a game of Go. So what they do is they create this model of the game. They define the rules. And then they train the system, and this is the key point, is that they have to train the system with thousands and thousands or millions and millions of different moves and different outcomes for the game. And then where the machine is able to beat the human is that in a much shorter space of time, it's able to go through all these different variations, all these possibilities of an outcome based on a decision, quicker and faster than a human. And that's what enabled the computer to beat a human at these games. But if there was some other aspect to it that required human intuition, I'm a little bit dubious in terms of how successful the algorithm would be. Then also, what computers can be good at is now they need to be able to generate the information. So once they've understood what an object is, for example, so it's a photo, they can now generate text that describes that photo. And now this is great for people that are visually impaired. And in the same vein, people that are hard of hearing, you could feed in an audio stream, and then the machine can automatically add in text to that stream. And these machines have to become more and more clever to understand the subtleties of human language. Okay, so let's jump into how we start now that we've got a bit of an understanding. Please feel free to jump in with questions, although I'm running a bit out of time. So how to start? So I'll start on the side that obviously interests me the most. It's the tools and the techniques. So I'm not going to go into great detail here, just purely because my assumption is most people on the call are not very technical. But I'm definitely happy to do follow-up discussions, or if you want to know specifics, I can dive into it. So around the storage side, as I mentioned earlier, my recommendation would be to start off by using a cloud provider. You've got Google, Amazon, Microsoft. They provide a whole range of services where you can store large amounts of data at very, very reasonable prices. And you can use it there, and it's really very performant, and at least you don't have to maintain that infrastructure. The same goes with computing power. So if you're starting to analyze really, really large data sets and do very complicated models, you obviously need quite powerful machines. So in the same way, you can offload that to these providers. These providers also have like modules and other software that allow you to interpret that data and to help you to analyze it. But this is now the hard part, is the interpreting and the visualizing. This is where you need people with skill that understands all this gobbledygook. So these are just a selection of some of the algorithms that data scientists would use to crunch through the data that they've got. And ultimately, what you're hoping is that the output from this is going to be a great graph or bar chart or some kind of visualization or summary that is easy for the stakeholder to consume, to say, okay, now I can actually make an informed decision based on what I'm seeing. And that's really the goal that you want to get to. The skills. So this is starting to solidify in the industry, and these kind of names are accepted. So a data engineer, this is someone that would specialize in collecting the data, transforming the data, and storing the data in a way that can now be used by the team. So meaning that you're going to have lots of unstructured sources and structured sources of data. So maybe you've got spreadsheets, you've got a database. So the data engineer is going to put it all together and put it into one kind of blob that can be used by everyone. The data scientist, this is the very skilled individual that's going to try, hopefully use rigorous mathematics or techniques to actually go through that data and find that needle in the haystack. And they're the one that understands these algorithms and different techniques to figure out trends and try and make predictions. And obviously, actually, most importantly, is your stakeholder. It's what is the business need? What is the driver? Because without that driver, without that objective of what you're trying to do, yeah, you're just gonna fall short. So importantly, you need to define some business objectives. So obvious ones are, well, you want to increase revenue. So you can't necessarily do these all at once, but you want to be able to increase your revenue. Typically, guys just want to increase their efficiency of their process or systems, and also very often you want to improve the experience of the end user, and then hopefully by doing that, the knock-on effect will be that you'll have more revenue or more market share. So let's do some real world examples, and the one's a video, so I'll just talk through it again. So in terms of increasing revenue, so there was a fast food restaurant in the States called Dickie's. They sell meat and chicken. It's like a turn and tender. And they wanted to figure out, how do they increase revenue? So they figured, well, look, we've got all this information coming through all our systems. Surely if we package it all together, we can figure something out. And what they did is they're able to see in the example here is that once they had enough historical data, they understood what a good lunchtime sales of ribs was. And then when the sales didn't meet those targets, they would then send out a message to all the people in that area saying, hey, we got a special in ribs, why don't you come in and get it? And then that then helped them to obviously increase the sales because selling more of them, but keep the inventory moving so the cost of sales is down, and then all around the business improved. In terms of efficiency, so I'm not sure how to pronounce this, Kona. So they build escalators and lifts. So what they've done is they've like put in a whole range of sensors into their devices, which gives feedback back to them into their cloud, and they're able to make really good predictions on faults or impending faults and how urgent things are, so that they can better organize their support team, the field technicians. And in the video, which unfortunately I'll skip because there's no video, is what it shows a lift telling back to the system that the temperature of the lift is high, but then the system says, well, the ambient temperature is actually quite high because it's a hot day, so it's not a real problem. We're not going to worry about it. Then it says, oh well, the lift door closed 7 seconds longer than it normally does. The system decides it's not a problem. It's rush hour, so it's probably someone jumping in quickly at the last minute holding the door open. Then there's another instruction that says that the lift stopped 11 millimeters short of the landing. And then the computer system goes, whoa, that's actually unacceptable, even though it's 11 millimeters and it's only happened once. And immediately it sends a message to a technician in the field. And then you see the technician taking out their mobile phone and using an application that gives them alerts of different faults, and it reorders the priority. And now the technician knows, okay, I have to, based on my location, this is my highest priority, I'm nearby, and goes and fixes that problem. So great efficiency improvement for the company there. Now, believe it or not, rock stars, heavy metal bands can also use big data. So what Metallica is doing now is they're taking local data from Spotify of what people are listening to, or what tracks people are listening to of their music in regions, so that when they do a live performance in that region, they tailor the playlist to be exactly the same as what the majority of people are playing. So what the outcome of that is that the fans in that area, they're loving it. They're going, this is amazing. I love all the songs that they're playing. How did they know that I must play all these songs? But then also the other spin-off is that now Metallica is able to make a recording of that event and sell it as a unique album and say, hey, we've got this unique album or this unique playset in that area, and hopefully the fans will buy that in addition, because it's now this area. So these are all novel uses that you can do with, once you understand the data set that you're dealing with, and you're obviously able to crunch through all that information. So that's a bit of a dump of information. So let's talk about some practical next steps. So the first thing, obviously, is it's the business case. So you got to say, well, what are the business needs? What is the vision of the solution? How do we see that it's going to work? What can we do? Well, what are our pain points? What do we need to improve? What do we need to change? Then you've got to go and say, well, where are we going to get this information? And I guess this is where you've got to start kind of thinking laterally in terms of the sources of information can come from numerous places, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the structured source. And that's I guess the beauty of what all where the industry is going. And you want to be able to enrich your data potentially with other sources of information, as an example, weather data or public holidays. How is that going to influence sales if you know that information? Okay, this is the hard part, the modeling insights. So there's unfortunately no shortcuts here. This is where you've got to take all your assumptions, and someone's got to sit down and do the modeling. But I mean, I wouldn't just stop throw my hands up in the air saying like you have to have all these amazing math skills. As a business owner, you'll know your business intimately. So hopefully with the information packaged in a slightly different way, you'll be able to see it and say, hang on, that looks like a bit of an anomaly, or this doesn't make sense to me. Can we maybe see it in a different angle? And just by going through that iterative process of looking at the data in different ways, you'll see something that's unique or different and can get something useful out of it. Then the hard part is, now that you've got this useful information, you've got to put it into your business. So you've got to create whatever it is. So I'm assuming in this example, you've got maybe a call center that now it's based on the responses of the person. You want to change the script of the message. So you've got to now build that into your process, and your software package has to now display the different messages and guide the operator on what questions to ask to get information to make a decision for the next step. And the more automated you can make your changes. So if you're trying to predict you do resource planning for the future, the more you can automate that instead of people having to manually go through spreadsheets, the better. And then the final step is obviously the adoption. We can't assume that just because we put these amazing things in place that it's just going to magically happen. So you've got to set some good KPIs for the people that are going to be using it, and obviously be very proactive in managing and tracking the changes to make sure that it's actually being used and that your assumptions are correct. Because you may find out that in the real world, when it's actually being used, you missed something and it's not doing exactly what you thought. And that's really it in a nutshell. Quite high level, and was through that. I hope it at least gives some insights or places to start. So I'm out of time, so I'm just going to very quickly go through touch size, what we do, where we come in, and that also might help to frame the context of what we've done. So we really want to figure out what's happening in the informal trade, and we want to obviously totally disrupt the way that brands and consumers interact with each other. So how do we do that? So we want to be able to run marketing campaigns for brands that we work with, where we can justify the return on investment of that marketing spend, and hopefully move the needle on sales in that environment or market share of that particular product. And so we do that. We feel that we've got some unique technology that we put down. So we put down this unique tech all around in the area that collects all this information on shopper behavior, and this is all in the informal trade. So this is where we've seen a unique niche, and that there's a big gaping hole of data that these brands know nothing about in the informal trade. And we're hoping to grow our footprint so that we'll have a sizable impact, and that our data will have a meaningful, provide meaningful decisions to our brands. And here's an example of a dashboard that we created that we would present. So you'll see I've blurred out the names of the sites and hidden the logos of some of the companies involved. But this is really powerful to brands because they're able to log in and they can see this information in real time. So they're seeing, as transactions are happening, they can see this happening and they make decisions on this. We're starting to run trials and experiments. So the data set here is very, very small, but it's like we set up a control group, and then we have another set of shoppers where we will run a particular promotion, and we run multiple tests. So the one promotion will be where they get a discount. The other promotion is where they get airtime as a reward. And we gauge the uptake, and we see which type of marketing was more effective for that market and that particular product. And we get real feedback, and we can make good decisions. And we've been able to see that certain promotions for certain products, price points, work better than others. And it's a noticeable difference. What's great is we can see the adoption of the system and how people are using it. So over time, we're tracking how some of our users are ordering off our device, so we can see their ordering behavior of products, and this helps the manufacturer to get their manufacturing process in order to optimize what they're going to be manufacturing as well as delivering. So we're helping to optimize their delivery schedule, which is all really great for them. From the brands, we can give really exciting breakdowns, and obviously this is just a static image, but I don't know if you can see my mouse cursor, but like here in the top left here, we can click on these drop downs of brand and subcategory and change the dates. And as we change this, all of the graphs and it updates in real time. And so this is fantastic for a brand owner to be able to have this dashboard in front of them and not have to now go and ask someone else, please update the report. I actually want to look at a different subcategory. They can do it all themselves. They can do self-service and just click all the buttons and see what's happening. And we've got a great heat map that's showing them sales during the course of the day, time of day and day of week. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you all for listening. I hope that gave a bit of insight. And yes, unfortunately, I do have to run. But if there are any questions, I'm happy to do it via email or the next time, or even do a one-on-one call.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Before you run. Thank you very much for doing the presentation. There's a lot of useful information there. How does one start? I know you are rolling this out and it's going to the informal sector. What you guys are doing with TouchSides, that you sending out you're gathering the information from the informal sector, which means you are busy building these for guys that don't really have huge amounts of funds to analyze their data. So in order to build something for our businesses, how do you go, where do you start, and what sort of costs would you have a look at in building something meaningful for your own business?
Well, you see, so for us, it's a little bit different in that we're trying to create a business. So we're going into a market that doesn't have anything. But in your own company, surely you're going to have lots of sources of data. So I mean, I'm not sure what the industries that everyone's in that's on the call. But I mean, let's say you were in cable installation, you're installing Ethernet cables. There you're going to have how many meters of cable did you install today? And maybe that's not being tracked, but that's a source of information of data that you have. And maybe if you tracked it, it might be beneficial. And then you could find some kind of correlation between that and the size of the office. So really, where do you start is you've got to look at all of the little potential things that influence your business, and say, well, can I find a data source that can help me understand that better? And only the people that know their business very well can do that. You need to have a good understanding of what the drivers are and levers are in your business.
Awesome, thank you.
Sure, I'll put that to answer that.
Are you rushing, or can you answer one or two more questions?
No, unfortunately, I got to run.
All right, thank you.
Do a school run. I'm running late for that.
Thanks, Jarrod.
Oh yeah, cool. Thanks. Cheers.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, guys. So what I'll do is I'll send out Jarrod's email address, and any questions and stuff you can send through to him. Like he said, he's got 3 kids, and they're all in nursery school, so he runs around like a madman. Anyway, I wanted to end off, and I can see that Daryl's here from Anchor, just to give a quick market update. I know that we're running a little bit late and a little bit over time. So, hello, Daryl.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me. Thanks, Jason, for organising.
Pleasure. Just if you can give us a brief overview of what's happening in the markets up till now, and then we can call it a day. So give us good news.
Fortuitous timing. And the good news is that the local markets ended flat in July, which is a nice solid change, considering that we're still down significantly for the year. And to be quite frank, it's been quite an exhausting time for South African investors for the better part of 3 to 3.5 years, as I'm sure we've all felt that pinch. It's been a bit of a tale of two halves so far in 2018. We had quite a good political outcome in December, and understandably, a lot of the local consumer-facing sectors like the retailers, the banks, the South African industrial stocks really took off. Having been beaten up for a long time, and then quite a shock GDP number towards the middle of March, if memory serves, minus 2.2%, kind of put into that positivity. And a lot of those sectors gave back a lot of those gains. The rand weakened, the bond market blew out quite significantly. And true to South African form, we look internally and blame ourselves completely for what's happened, but actually, if you take a bit of a global view, what you've seen so far in 2018 is somewhat of an emerging market rout. Naturally, South Africa is an emerging economy. A lot of our growth drivers are linked to other emerging markets. And what you've seen so far in 2018 is, the biggest outflows on record from the likes of our bond market, and it's affected our currency. And it isn't just about South Africa. Other emerging markets have really caught quite a bloody nose. If you think about Tencent, which really is actually the largest driver of our local market because it makes up such a portion of Naspers, which again makes up more than 20% of the JSE. That's down about 25% peak to trough from January to now in dollars. So it's been quite a tough time for emerging markets. Why is that? Well, there's certain instances around, potential trade wars that are causing uncertainty, causing volatility, causing concern. Understandably amongst global investors, and when there is volatility and concern, as we've seen before, generally speaking, money flows out of risky assets like emerging market currencies, bonds, and equities back to the center. What is the center? Historically, the center has been the US dollar, the US bond market, which is now offering 3% over 10 years versus 1.2% 2 years ago, so not looking all that terrible. And very tongue-in-cheek, up until about a week ago, the NASDAQ was being called the new safe haven asset of the world, and that is incredibly tongue-in-cheek. The US market, the equity market, has been incredibly resilient again this year, despite the volatility that you've seen. Up until the end of July, the NASDAQ was up quite sharply, although getting back some of those gains, I'll get into that shortly. The S&P was up about 1%. And then the rest of the world, Europe and the rest of the developed world, down a couple of percentage points, EM down significantly. I suppose what's most frustrating for South African investors is the context of the last 3.5 years, and especially last year. You've had incredibly strong global equity market conditions. The S&P gave you about 22% in dollars last year. EM was up about 28, 29% in dollars. So unfortunately, South Africa scored a couple of own goals, as we're all aware, over the last 3.5 years. And actually, if you stripped out the performance of Naspers over those 3 years, the performance has been quite dire. So the big question is, okay, that's all good and well, but what does that mean? If you look to the more positive side and you look at valuations, the valuation discrepancy between emerging market equities and developed market equities are at decade-long highs. So we would argue that right now emerging markets are offering pretty decent value, and we don't think that, the reality is the macroeconomic backdrop is very strong synchronized global growth. Despite the risk of trade wars, you've got economies firing all at one. At the moment, America is growing 4.1% real. You've got Europe that seems to be showing some pretty positive signs. You've got emerging markets that continue to power ahead on the back of strong commodity prices. You've got Japan that's waking up after a 3-decade-long slumber, starting to show signs of inflation. So the backdrop to all of this is some pretty strong conditions for equities. And risky assets like emerging equities. And so what you have started to see in July, which we started to feel the benefit of, is that there was a flow of funds back towards emerging markets. And for the first time in many months, you saw positive flows out of developed markets into emerging markets. And so you started to see towards the back end of July, particularly, a pickup in our banks again, a pickup in some of our retailers and some of our industrial stocks. Now, the reality is, as we all know, the JSE is incredibly split insofar as what the drivers of performance are. You've got the SA economy-facing businesses, and then you've got the global rand hedges. And then the rand strengthened slightly as well, although it seems to be getting back a little bit of that this morning on the back of Cyril's comments last night around the fact that they will probably push ahead with a vote for a change to the constitution around land expropriation. Now, importantly, we don't think that that's an overtly negative statement. We are looking for Cyril and his ruling party to take the bull by the horns. And it's quite clearly the kickoff of the election campaign for next year. Very interesting to see what Julius and the EFF's response will be. So to summarize, we remain quietly confident on the global growth conditions for equities. We think that the valuation discrepancy between emerging markets and developed markets is extreme. We think that the JSE, for the first time in many years, is offering very decent value. Obviously in pockets, and not all shares in all sectors are made the same naturally, but we are finding more opportunities than we were a year ago. I suppose the reality is, in 3-year flat market conditions, where despite the beleaguered economy, these companies are continuing to grow their earnings, and understandably they become cheaper and cheaper on a PE multiple basis. So, our base case view is that it's not an all fall down scenario in South Africa. We do think that the reform will come, most likely will come after the election. It's unlikely you're going to get policy certainty before then. And until you get policy certainty, you probably find that corporate South Africans and consumer South Africans remain in a bit of a holding pattern. There are no obvious signs of economic growth just yet, although the leading indicators from a confidence perspective all seem to be pointing in a good direction.
And then that's that.
And that is that. I mean, obviously, I said I'd come back to it, but the NASDAQ and the technology sector as a whole has been incredibly strong again this year on the back of a very strong 2018. That all changed a little bit about a week ago when Facebook reported results that disappointed the markets, and then Twitter followed a day later. And it gave investors a little bit of a spook, and Facebook came off, I think, about 20% on the night. Incredibly strong. I think it's important to keep perspective. The reality is we're back to where we were about 3 months ago. Facebook was trading at about $175. So we don't think that it's time to throw the baby out of the bathwater yet when it comes to technology companies. We believe that for a number of these companies, both the existing ones and the emerging companies, they have built and continue to build an incredible moat around their businesses insofar as their user bases go. Obviously valuation is an important consideration, but because of the rate of change in the technology sector, as the previous presentation alluded to, the rate of change that we're seeing and continue to see is something that we've never seen before. So it is meaning that traditional valuation methodologies of plugging something into a spreadsheet, putting out a PE number, and then investing according to that. While that's important, it will mean that you will always miss the likes of an Amazon, a Netflix, an Alibaba to a certain extent, a Tencent to a certain extent, because quite factually, those are always going to look a little bit expensive for value managers. So analysts and fund managers globally are already having to recalibrate, I think, the way that they view the world. And it's a combination of past valuation and forward-looking valuation, but the exponential growth that you're seeing in these companies. I mean, Apple reported staggering numbers last night. Growth off of a massive base, quarterly growth of 17% in revenues. So to put that in context, their profits are roughly $11.5 billion in quarterly revenue, and they're well on their way to becoming the first $1 trillion company in the world. These growth rates that you're seeing off the size of bases that you've got, we haven't seen before. So it is making traditional investment methodology a little more tricky. And for asset managers like ourselves, it's important to try and look at the way that you look at the world at the moment with open eyes. With more of a periphery vision.
Awesome, thank you. Cool, guys. So I think, has anybody got any questions before we go and enjoy August?
All good.
All good. Okay. So why I wanted to end off, Martin? Okay.
This is both fascinating conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. The way I wanted to just end off was to create, and I know that a couple of you have discussed this concept with you already before, but we are entering a brand new month, and the idea is that we live in a world of language. We create the world that we live in. And a little quote here by a guy by the name of Peter Drucker says, the best way to predict your future is to create it. So if we're living in a world of context, basically the world that we perceive is based on the language that we put out. And to give you an example of that is, you've got a presentation that you need to do, and you've done a lot of work on this presentation, and you've sent it out to your colleagues just to overlook. And a colleague reads this presentation. This colleague that gets your presentation really gets under your skin. It really irritates you, and everything you say to this person frustrates you and really makes you feel edgy. He replies to your email and he says, thank you for your email. I have a few comments I would like to make before you present it. I'll be at your office around 3 o'clock to give you my input. Generally, your feeling towards an email like that builds up anger and frustration within you, and you don't really want to meet this person. You're going to do whatever it takes not to be at that meeting. But consider the fact that, consider the opposite end, where a person that really energizes you and really gets you going, and you feel happy and you're in his presence and you want to be around him all the time. He replies to you and says, thank you, I got your email. I've got a few comments I'd like to make before you present it. I'll be at your office at 3 o'clock. Your reaction to that email is completely different. You feel energized and saying, all right, well, I'd actually like to hear what this person has to say. The point is that the response that you interpret is exactly the same from both emails, but your response to it is completely different. One, you don't want to be there. One, you do want to be there. And that just proves that we live in a world of language. We perceive the world out there, and we make assumptions around that. So my question to you to close off the meeting is, how are you going to perceive this month, and what are you going to do to make it a successful and good one? And that's how I'd like to end off. Thank you all very much for coming, and I'm going to set up another one for the first Wednesday of next month. Have a lekker week and month.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for that, Jason.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks, Jarrod.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Bert.
Thanks, Jason. Take care.
Cheers,
Thanks, Jace. Excellent.
Cheers,